Welcome to Overflow of the Heart. Today we're going to be pouring in Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Do you think Jesus is the Messiah? Do you think he's the direct descendant of King David? These are the questions that were going through Matthew's mind while he was writing this book. And it's the questions we're going to focus on as we're studying it. He starts off his book with a genealogy, a family tree of Jesus. And he decides to go through the line of Joseph, Jesus' earthly father, as that descendant. Matthew is also focused on us being able to memorize the genealogy, not just us today, but especially those in the past who didn't have access to the written word like we do today. So he focused in on there being 14 generations. 14 generations from Abraham to King David, 14 generations from King David to the exile to Babylon, 14 generations from the exile to Babylon to Jesus. The reason Matthew chose 14 is in the Hebrew language, consonants can be read as letters or numbers. And so David's name ends up being 4 plus 6 plus 4, which equals 14. And so it held significance in proving that Jesus was from King David's descendant line. Therefore, we get the 14 generations between each event. In modern times, it seems inaccurate to leave out people from our family trees, but it was actually rather common back then to just hit the key players throughout the genealogy. So Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So imagine God saying to you right now, get up, take everything you own, take your family, and go. I'm not going to tell you where, just go. That's hard to imagine, right? That's exactly what happened to the first person in the genealogy, Abraham. God promised Abraham that his descendants would live in a land that was so amazing it was flowing with milk and honey. He also said his descendants were going to be as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. And so Abram had tremendous faith, and he left everything he had and followed God. And after many years, Abraham still had faith that God would bring him a descendant. And so he traveled and he followed God and he kept that faith. And then finally, at the age of 100, Isaac was born. So Isaac grew up and became a young adult. And then God appears to Abraham again and says, I want you to take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac. Take him up to this mountain, and I want you to sacrifice him to me. So Abraham got up the next day, took his son and a couple servants, and took the 3-day journey to the mountain. When he got there, he took Isaac up on the mountain, bound him, and went to sacrifice him, but God stopped him. And so he gave him a ram to sacrifice, and Isaac was saved. This foreshadows the events to come. As we know, when God calls down about Jesus, this is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. But ultimately, Jesus does become the sacrifice, and God lets him be the sacrifice for all men. So from the very first person in the genealogy, Matthew is pointing to Jesus. From Abraham to the sacrifice of Isaac, to God and the sacrifice of his son, Jesus. Let's read on. Verse 2 says, Abraham is the father of Isaac, and Isaac is the father of Jacob. Now Isaac's wife and Jacob's mom was actually pregnant with twins. And while they were still in her womb, God appeared to her and said that the oldest will be serving the youngest. So they were born, and Esau was the oldest, and Jacob was the youngest. Jacob gets older. He ends up talking Esau out of his birthright. And later, through deceit, he disguises himself, talks his father Isaac into giving him Esau's blessing. When Esau finds all this out, he gets very angry, and so Jacob flees. And so he goes to a distant village, and he finds a girl that he falls in love with. And he tells the father-in-law that he will work for him for 7 years so that he can marry his daughter. And the man agrees. So he works the 7 years. He gets married They go on the honeymoon. The next morning, he realizes he actually married the older sister, not the girl that he wanted to marry. So he gets angry and he goes to his father-in-law and says he's deceived him. And his father-in-law says, I can't let the younger sister marry before the older because of the traditions back then. So he agrees to work 7 more years and to earn the hand of the woman he loves. And so Jacob ends up having sister wives. He actually ends up having children with both of the sister wives and their servants, totaling a total of 12 children. The one we're going to be focusing on that continues this genealogy through Matthew is Judah. To understand Judah, first you have to understand who he was as a younger man growing up with 11 brothers. You might have heard of a man named Joseph. Coat of many colors, ends up being a prince in Egypt. Pretty famous guy in the Bible. Judah was one of his brothers. And so Joseph didn't get along with his other 11 brothers. So one day when he came out to them, the 10 brothers said, let's throw Joseph in this pit and leave him here to die. And so they do. They throw him in the pit. But then Judah sees a caravan from Egypt, slave traders. And so he comes up with the idea of selling Joseph instead to the people going to Egypt to be a slave, to make some money. And so Joseph is sold into Egypt because of Judah's plan. Flash forward many years, Judah is a man, an older man, and he has 3 sons. The first son marries a woman named Tamar, and unfortunately he dies. So in Jewish tradition, the second brother marries Tamar to help carry on the older son's line. He refuses to have children with Tamar, and so God strikes him down, and he's dead. Now there's a younger brother who's not quite the age to marry, and so Judah promises Tamar that when he's older, she can marry him. But the years go on and on and on, and Judah is not true to his word. So Tamar tricks Judah into having a child with her. When he goes to punish her and realizes that it's his own kid, he backs off of the punishment and accepts that what he should have done all along, raises the sons as his own. Then we find out Tamar is actually pregnant with twins. Once again, the younger twin is the one who will carry on the family line, which is not normal in the Jewish traditions. So from Judah, we go to Perez. The next few generations we don't know too much information about is that Perez, Hezron, Ram, Abinadab, and Nashon were all in Egypt. Especially Nashon, we know, was a part of the Israelites who saw the 10 plagues, who crossed the Red Sea, who saw the glory of God on the mountain and Moses reading the 10 Commandments. He actually became the leader of the tribe of Judah in the wilderness and was in charge of 186,000 men. He was the first one to bring an offering to the tent of meeting for God. So there are the first 6 generations that Matthew put in Jesus' genealogy. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, Perez, Hezron, Ram, Abinadab, and Nashon. From all this, we know that Jesus did not come from a perfect past. There were mistakes, deceivers, people that we don't even know a lot about. But we do know that there were people faithful to God who had so much faith in God that it was credited to them as righteousness. I think it's important to remember in this part of the genealogy that sometimes people of faith, people who are following God, get tested. And God is looking to make sure that they're in a spot to fully commit and love Him. And that He's there for you even when you don't know all of the story or what's going on. Maybe you may not feel very significant, but generations later, because you are alive and your kid's alive, he might be planning something huge through your line. We don't always see the big picture, but God always knows. He always knows what's coming and how to get you where you personally need to be. So the takeaway today is God might be putting you through a trial or a test right now, but it's because he has your long-term peace and happiness and growth in mind. And we have to have faith even in the face of controversy or fear to follow his plan and to see where he's guiding us. Have a great day. I love you guys.